Hi everybody, we're due to start in 2 minutes. So if anybody's in the audience, if you can just say a quick hello in the discussion box, and then I know I'm not talking to myself. I'm not recording it yet. Just come to say hello. Oh, hello Natalia. Oh, brilliant. And Zoe, thank you. It's nice to know I'm not on my own. I can't see anybody. You know, I like to see people. We've got a heavy topic today, business resilience. Hi, Ben. Oh, thank you. Well, I've already had my technical issues. I've had to restart my computer twice. Oh, Ian, hello. Nice to see you. Yeah. So I've had technical issues. I've had to restart my computer twice to get the microphone working. So you can obviously hear me because you're talking back to me. That's good. Better keep an eye on the clock. I like to chat on. So some of the topic is a bit heavy, but the slides are there and it's got some examples at the end. So just bear with it if it seems a bit intense. It's all for a very good cause. Give it another minute just so that we're not starting ahead of time. I'm not being one for early. Anyway, we've got the sun shining in the northeast of England and there's snow on the ground, and it was -6 this morning, so it's warmed up. We're at 1 degree now. And another good thing, I'm not in my PJs. Notice I have getting dressed for the occasion, done my hair, put a little bit of makeup on just to hide the COVID spots, chocolate spots. Right, it's noon. Let's go for it. Right, okay. Now what I'm going to do is share my screen. Bear with me while I get this on. Right, you have to do the application window. I think that's how I froze my screen this morning. Right, does that appear okay? Let's have a go. Right, can you see it all right? Is everything? Because I've done the shared screen thing. Right, lovely. Thank you very much. Right, welcome to today's session. It's all about building a resilient business. And as we saw last year, we had a few events which would push people into needing to have a resilient business. Oh, it's not working. Let's have a look. Right, here we go. So first of all, I did look up the definition. What is resilience? And it's the ability of people, but in today's talk about businesses, being able to recover quickly when they faced crisis. And it happens throughout life. You can't go through life without any crisis things happening. So 2020, as we know, big pandemic. Some businesses were affected more than others. Some of us were lucky enough not to have to implement a disaster recovery plan. Other people had their business took away overnight. So in order to survive a crisis, and we've seen plenty of examples, you need to be either very lucky, and some people were very lucky, or you need to be able to act quickly when the crisis arrives. So today we're going to look at some examples of what you can do in advance. So sometimes you can avoid a crisis. For example, and I'm looking at it from a business context, you can avoid late registration for VAT purposes, and you can predict when you're going to run out of cash, so it should never be a surprise. And if you're selling to your customer, you can know in advance if you're going to make a profit. Sometimes things happen, so it's not always the case. And if anybody's ever lost their data, well, you can plan against it. You can safeguard your data. So the main point is to take control. So if you think about what problems could arise and what things you can do to mitigate that situation. So I've got a few examples to see how you can build a more resilient business, because it's all about planning, control. And just before we get on to that, the first place to start is to be in control of your numbers. And I know I would say that because I'm an accountant, but you don't have to be an accountant to be in control of your numbers. You need to know if you're making a profit. It's quite surprising when somebody comes to me to get their tax return done, and it's 9 months after the event, and I say to them, have you made a profit? And they say, I have no idea. And obviously you need to know if you've got enough cash to live. So, as I've said, if you're preparing your accounts once a year to give to an accountant or to do your own tax return, you really do need to up your game. And if you've done that just recently and you've just filed your tax return in January and you were doing your figures for the tax return, shame on you, really. You've got to get a grip. So a couple of other things. If you are a sole trader and you're running one bank account for your business and your personal life, get it separate. It doesn't need to cost you any money. You can just use another private bank account. Save up for your tax bills. Nobody likes to pay them, but it softens the blow a little bit if you've got the money put to one side. If you don't know how to work it out, get some help or estimate. Have a look at last year. Have a look forward and try and work out what your tax bill's roughly going to be. If you're not VAT registered, and we see this quite a lot with people who turn up and say, we need an accountant, we think we've gone over the VAT threshold 6 months ago. You need to know in advance. So there's ways you can measure it. You can record your turnover. You know what the rules are. It's 12 months rolling basis, and you've got to keep an eye on it. So if you're doing your turnover 9 months after the event, you might have gone over it ages ago. I've got an example at the end. So how do I get started? This is all about building a plan to look after, creating a resilient business. So first of all, improve your financial controls. Secondly, analyse what sort of impacts you might be under threat from. And then create a plan on how you're going to respond to these threats. And then the key thing is to have things in place so you know when that's being triggered. So let's look at financial controls. And what I would say to you is don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of tax. Don't be afraid of financial figures, systems. If you do worry about them, get somebody to explain it to you in a language that you understand. First thing is up-to-date, accurate financial records. None of us really some people do, but none of us really like the bookkeeping side. But there are ways to make it easier. So you could use, I'm a fan of QuickBooks. Those who know me know I'm queen of QuickBooks, but there's Xero, there's Free Agent, there's loads of lovely packages out there. Just find one that you're happy with. There's a product called Wave where you can just do your invoicing. If you're using QuickBooks and Xero, for example, and Free Agent, you can link your online bank account. And that allows you to then automate your bookkeeping. So you don't have to do your bookkeeping on a Sunday. You can watch Netflix or something. And there are loads of things to snap receipts, photograph them, store them online. So, you don't have to have a shoebox or a carrier bag full of receipts. You can just get it all set up and get it to run smoothly. The second thing is about cash. You need to know how much money you've got and how much you've got left so you don't spend it on the wrong things. Invoicing, don't leave your invoicing for 3 months. Obviously, I've been guilty of that in the past. It takes you longer to get the money in if you invoice late, so invoice promptly. And from an ethics point of view, pay your suppliers on time. It also stops you from getting to a point where you owe a load of money and you don't even know how much you owe. So if you pay people when you should or on time, early, whatever, you've got a better handle on what you've got left that you can take for your own, your own spend. And as I said, get a savings account for your tax and put something away. So every time somebody pays you for a customer invoice, if you're VAT registered, put something away for the VAT. If you're not VAT registered, put something away for your tax as well. And understanding your numbers. it breaks my heart when people don't understand their own numbers. Just find a way. Go and talk to people. If you're in one of the networking groups, there's always somebody who will help you. Either somebody else who's got a business. Don't ask your family because they have no idea. Go and ask somebody who's used to running their own business, or an accountant or a bookkeeper, just somebody who isn't afraid of numbers and they can explain things to you. And if you look at it as if you have a household, you've got money coming in and then you've got a load of bills to pay. It's exactly the same as business. You've got money coming in, you've got bills to pay, and the biggest impact is the timing because you pay your taxes later on. Understanding what your numbers mean. So if you, I was talking to a lady the other day who runs a cafe, and her business had increased by quite a lot. And I said, right, so your turnover's gone up by £15,000. How much should your food costs have gone up? Because she goes and buys the food. She does buffets. And she said, oh, I don't understand what you mean. So I reduced it down and said, if you charged somebody £500 for a buffet, how much would the food cost you to go and buy for that buffet? She says, oh, 250. So obviously, getting the right language. So she understood my question. I said, right, well, in this case, on your business, your costs have gone up by £15,000. So if you'd have spent 500, you charged 500 to your customer, your costs were £500, and that's not including labour and fuel and all the rest of it. So this is what I'm on about when I'm saying understand your margins and your products with your customers. You also need to know if you don't get any income in, as a lot of people had with 2020, they had no money coming in, but they still had to pay the rent on the premises. They still had to pay for the Wi-Fi, the phone bills and things like that. How much does it cost you? If you've got nothing else coming in, how much does it cost you to run your business? They called you overheads, and you need to know how much, because they'll take all that cash that you've got in the bank if you've got any. Right, and also about knowing how much cash you've got in the bank, but also how much of that cash you need to pay taxes, suppliers, and to take so you can cover your own mortgage payments, your own bills. So that's what we're on about when we're saying about cash. It's about how to survive in your normal life. So the next thing would be to look at analysing the risks and working out how they would impact your business. And it's all relative. So it depends on your business, your industry, what type of customers you're working with. So I've done a load of questions, and you just need to look at them in context with your business. So here are my questions. So what happens if the sales decline rapidly? And you can't say it wouldn't happen because we saw evidence of it. Everybody who had a pub or a cafe overnight, even the hairdressers, overnight their income had dropped. What happens if you lose one of your key employees? So if you've got people in a team and you rely heavily, for example, I have one of my team looks after payroll, and if she just suddenly couldn't come to work one day, I was going to be in a right hole. Anyway, I took some of my own advice and done something about it. What would happen if you were ill and it came all of a sudden? I've been there where you get 6 weeks notice that you're going into hospital for a major operation. How is your business going to run while you're not there to look after it? I took 5 months off work through illness, and I can tell you now, if you haven't got the systems in place, like I didn't have, your business will be at major risk. I'm actually quite lucky to still have my business because I didn't have any of this sort of thing in place. And environmental risks. What would happen if there's a major flood or the roads are shut or something like that? Just have a look at things like that. Health and safety. I think the COVID virus comes under that. So, there's plenty of evidence, and it's no good running around going, oh God, woe is me, what am I going to do? You need to have a plan ready and implement your plan to survive. What happens if your costs rise significantly? I used to work in a newspaper at the Sunderland Echo, if you're from the northeast, and one of the things that used to hit heavily on the margins was the fact that the paper prices would overnight increase, sometimes double. so you need to keep an eye on how your costs are and what are you relying. Can you switch to another supplier? Can you switch to a substitute product? If you start looking at the day that you need to do it, it's too late. You need to have plans in place. And what happens if your supply chain is disrupted? And this just made me think of the loo rolls in the crisis. What happens if you can't get enough supply to meet the demands of your customers? You need to look at what you're heavily reliant on. And sometimes you can do it by building stock, but really, would you want to have a warehouse full of loo rolls? You don't know when the crisis is going to happen. And the other thing I've seen on a few occasions is banks can withdraw your overdraft facility with very short notice. And sometimes they'll give you notice, but if you don't open the envelopes, you don't read the letter, you don't know what's happening until you go and try and pay something and you've got nothing there. So you need to know what's going on and take some action beforehand. Oh yes, what happens if your internet fails? Gosh, I couldn't run my life without the internet. I've got two options. I've got Wi-Fi, normal broadband coming in the house. I've also got hotspot on my mobile phone. I can't live without my Wi-Fi. I can't get on with any work because everything's in the cloud, fully digital, and I need to be able to. The other thing is I'm quite mobile. I can pick up my laptop and go and work somewhere else where somebody has got some Wi-Fi. And I know there's a lockdown at the moment, but there are COVID-friendly offices about the UK. Oh, here's another one. Gosh, if anybody's ever lost their data, it can wipe out days, weeks, months. I've seen it almost bring a company to its knees because they couldn't get at the data. If you've got important data, you need to be able to protect it and you need to be able to access it online and offline. You should take some IT advice or do some research if you've got the time. And what happens if your systems crash? Well, obviously the IT tell you just to reboot everything. So I've done that today. But the thing is, I came on early so I could test it. I could get my microphone to work. Chrome froze, so I just rebooted everything, resets everything. But I came on early. I didn't just turn up in time for today's session. So what do? First of all, go through your business and identify the risks. And you might think, well, I don't know where to start. I don't know what my risks are. I've got some examples at the end. Might give you a few pointers, but you're looking at your sales. Do you have one customer or two customers that you're heavily reliant upon? Do you need to make sure that you've got a pot of money in case they suddenly overnight can't give you that business? Let's have a look. What other things could there be? The bank obviously withdrawing your overdraft facility. Just going through the overheads, what would you do if your phone didn't work? What if your telephone system stopped working? That sort of thing. Go through each one. If you can't do it on your own, just get somebody to buddy up with and get talking to each other and do it together. Then for every area of risk that you identify, think about what's the worst case scenario. And it's not about doom and gloom. It's about what happens if in the future something happens, big crisis. What could I do to get out of that or to survive? And you might have two or three options that you think, well, I could do this or I could do that, and have a look at each one and work out, right, if that happened, what would I do? These are the sort of things that roll around in your head when you're trying to get to sleep. If you document it, you can sleep a bit easier because you've got a plan in place. So what we're doing is identifying, the solutions to either get rid of the risk altogether, because you can do that, or if you can't, work out what the impact is and work out what your solutions would be, work out how much they would cost to do. Could you do them? Sometimes if you put a plan in place, it's cheaper and more cost effective if you do it early. If you try and do it at the last minute when you've got the crisis, it'll cost you a lot more. It'll take all your energy. It'll stop you from doing something else that you had planned that's important. And it's not really the way to do it. So it's act early, make a plan, and implement it. And it's all right having it in your head, but can I just say it's not the right way to do it. Document it, obviously on somewhere where you can rescue your data if you lose your data, and work out a plan of action and have them in sections so that if something goes wrong with your sales or your customers, you can go to your sales and customers section. I've called it a crisis response plan. There's disaster recovery plan. Call it what you like. I'm not bothered what you call it, but you need to have your action plan. What do you do if something happens? And when you're trying to work out what to do and what to implement first, you've got to prioritize it. So if you're looking at the risk of losing your overdraft facility, you might be in a position where you can't possibly save any cash to protect you at the minute. So you just keep it on the list and go and do something that you can do, quickly or more urgent. But you can make a plan. It might stop you making a decision that works against your plan. And, you've got to allocate time. There's no quick fix. You can't wave a magic wand and get rid of all your risks and do it overnight. You have to have a plan. And if you haven't got one already, there's a lot to do. Break it into sections and just do one. You might do one every week. You might do one every month. Just have a plan and work through it. If you start now and you've got 12 points on your plan, in 12 months, you'll have had it done. If you do nothing, you'll be sitting at the same position you are now in 12 months' time. And obviously, action's the key thing. There's no point having a lovely documented plan and not doing anything with it. It's just pointless, don't bother. Go and watch Netflix. So the other key thing is to monitor and have trigger points. So if we go back to the example of going over the VAT registration threshold, how would you ever know? If you just look at it once a year, it's too late. So you've got to think, right, well, how would I know? Because it's no good knowing in hindsight. You want things that are going to trigger in advance. So, for example, taking the example of the VAT, you could set up a system where even if you can't be bothered to do your bookkeeping, you monitor your sales figures. Everybody likes sales figures. Easy enough. You might be happy to do that. And it's on a 12-month rolling basis. So you just need what's your last 12 months of turnover and what do I need to include? So, for example, if you're selling on eBay, whatever, they'll deduct fees before you get it. Now, your VATable turnover is gross. It's before PayPal have took their fees off and things like that. So you need to know what figure you need to include in your monitor, or you might miss the point. Right. Then you need a system to review them. Because you could, if you're using QuickBooks, for example, you can set up an automatic report. But if that report's emailed to you and you never open it, well, it's pointless. So you have to take notice of the figures, read them, understand them and acknowledge, what am I measuring? Have I gone over? Do I need to do anything? No, right, move on. So you might do it monthly. You might just say, oh no, I'll just do it once a quarter. I'm looking ahead enough. You would do it monthly if you were close to the trigger point. So you adapt your systems to fit what's going on at that point. And it's no good putting the plan in the drawer to gather dust. It needs to be a living document so that you can protect your business. And by protecting your business, you'll protect your personal life. If you've got a family to look after, you'll be able to continue looking after them because you can take early action. So we're on to the examples. How wonderful is that? Right. So, for example, I've talked about the VAT registration. So I had a case where we were doing the tax return in January 2021. We're looking at year ended the 31st of March 2020. The business had gone over the VAT threshold. in June 2019. So here we are, all this time later, and me having to say to somebody, oh, God, you've gone over the VAT threshold and you went over in June 19. So we can't do anything to reduce how much you're selling. So these were the issues we were talking through. You know, there was no chance to increase the prices to cover the VAT element. So all the prices have gone up by 20% and there's no chance to put the price up. Too late. You can do it from going forward, but you can't do it historically. Can't go back to everybody who bought a sandwich, well, not a sandwich because there's no VAT on them, but on a hot meal, Sunday lunch as it was, there's no point in going back to your customer and say, oh, you owe me some VAT. What do you think they're going to say? So you lose the opportunity to price increase. You also lose that opportunity to shrink your business back down because it might not be worthwhile being VAT registered. If you're just over and you've got no, you know, you need to look at what the elements are. But in this case, there's no point in selling more and handing over 20%. A lot of the food is zero rated. The labour content there's no VAT on that, so she's going to have to pay 20%, and there's very little to offset. And you know, it's the first draft was £15,000. That's a bit of a shock when you know putting your tax return in. We managed to find a VAT scheme, and we managed to work out when it went over. So instead of saying it's from April 19, we got it to June. Got to register from the 1st of August. So we got the cost down to £7,000, and that's a hell of a lot better than 15,000, but it's still not very nice, and it could have been avoided. So crisis avoidance techniques are monitor the sales, do your books up to date. I haven't put that on, but up to date books, and even if she wasn't doing up to date bookkeeping, if she'd have brought our books in May, we would have found out a lot quicker. Still a bit late, but you know, better than finding out in January. So, you know, very sad tale. Mitigating risks example 2, bad debt write-off, £5,000. Now, you can't always plan ahead for this, but you can make a conscious effort about accepting the risk. So you can check how creditworthy your customer is. If somebody just lands on your door and you've never heard of them before, why have they picked you to buy from? Have they got the money? You know, just check out. Because if you've done the work, and particularly if the material's involved, you're going to be seriously out of pocket because you've not only lost your profit element, you've lost costs as well. Some people say to me, oh, God, no, I can't possibly take a deposit. I can prove to you you can take a deposit. You've just got to be very confident and get your offering right. You might want to ask for guarantees, and then you've got extra protection. Just have a think about it. It's not a sale, remember, it's not a sale until you've got the money in the bank. And if it's a credit card, remember, it's not a sale until they've not taken the money back from the credit card people. The other thing is about agreeing terms in advance. This way you can get early indication if somebody's not going to pay you. If you send an invoice out, it's got no terms of payment on, or you've not agreed it as part of the sales process, how is the customer going to know when to pay you? And obviously put your bank details on, because they'll just any excuse and they might not pay you. So if you haven't told them when you expect them to pay, you haven't agreed any terms with them, and you're just hoping they're going to pay and they're going to be happy with your service, you're not in control of the process. Take some advice, get some help. If you're not very confident with it, talk to people in the networking. They'll all help you. They'll all tell you how they've improved their processes to reduce their risk. There's also, if you're supplying goods, you could have your terms where you reserve title. So they can't own those items, and it depends what it is, until they've paid for them. So you can go and seize them. Obviously, if it's food that have been eaten, so you cannot. So just think about, what you're selling and can you do anything? And back to credit control, if they haven't paid you by the due date, you should be ringing them in advance, know that they're definitely going to pay you, take action if they haven't, and don't hesitate in taking legal action. But there's no point chasing debts and paying court fees if you're never going to get paid, if they've got no money. And that comes back to checking the creditworthiness beforehand. You might ask for, I've just been involved in a company purchase, they've asked for the solicitor to provide evidence and a surety that the funds are there. And, there's nothing to stop you saying, well, can I have a look at your bank balance? Have you got the money? And you need to know whether, if you haven't been paid, you need to know. And the only way you're going to know that is if you're checking your bank statement. I've known people who've sent out invoices and they have no system. And they couldn't tell me at the end of the year, when they were doing their own bookkeeping, they couldn't tell me whether they'd been paid or not. That's just asking for trouble, really. Ring your customer, find out why they haven't paid you. Have they got money troubles? Are they waiting for somebody else to pay them? And again, it's going back to the creditworthiness. Understand their process. What risks are you putting yourself under if you agree to let somebody have 30 days to pay a £5,000 bill? You need to be in control. And if they don't pay, get on with that debt collection. But don't throw loads of money at it. I've seen businesses throw a lot of money at debt collection, only to find out that the promises the debt collector made were never, ever going to be guaranteed. So they've thrown another £5,000 to collect a debt and had nothing, and then there's been another £5,000 out of pocket. So you have to know when to stop as well. Example number three. I had fun writing these. So some people just have one customer and they're happy with that. I'll not go into IR35 issues and things like that, but they've got one customer and they're heavily reliant upon it, and they've worked with them for years and it works well. But it comes with risk, and the idea is that you need to assess the risk and acknowledge it and put in place safety things. So you might say, right, big customer, I'm going to work with you for 4 days, but I need to have a day to go and work on other work so that I'm not just reliant upon you. If you've got a good relationship with the customer, they should be happy with that. And if they don't want to, if they want to say, no, I want you for 5 days, then you say to them, right, well, can I have some agreements? Can I have a 90-day notice period? Can I have a payment up front? Because if you're doing all your sales to one customer, they're paying you in 90 days, well, it's just not on. Take some advice and get some help. So these are the things I've obviously just gone through about agreeing a tie-in period. Yes, if you build a business and you bring in a team and it's been going on for a long time, one of my friends has gone through this and had a team of 17 people to support a major customer, and then the contract was not renewed. Now, what wasn't factored in was these people had been doing this job for, 10 years. That's 10 years where this staff got a right for redundancy. Unfortunately, because the risk hasn't been managed, they've had to close the business. They've had to make people redundant, and they've not been able to keep the business running. It's quite a sad tale, and it needs to be assessed early on so that things can be done. I've got some customers who they're building up a reserve to pay for redundancy in case they need to. It's sometime in the future. It's not an imminent risk, but they want to plan ahead for it. And I think that's a very wise thing to do. You can also talk to your customer about the risks. And if they're a good customer and they respect you and they're ethical, they'll work with you to help you to manage your risk, because it's not in their interest for you to go out of business. And obviously, I'm all about the numbers. Work out what would be the financial impact if you lost that customer. And in different scenarios, if you lost them overnight, if you lost them in 3 months' time, if you lost them in a year's time, and have a plan to work out what you need. So I've said about, having a savings pot. So if you're making profit, which you should be, if you've got a big customer and you're not making profit from it, you need to really assess that whole package. But you should be making profit on it. You should be able to put some of that profit away to protect you in the downturn. I've put it on the list. Go and take insurance. It might be worthwhile doing. Usually when I've looked into it, it's quite expensive and you're better off saving the money. But, there's always the chance it might suit you. And as I've said, go and get some other work, some bread and butter work that would keep you going through a crisis. And if you look at how people have reacted to the COVID pandemic, I've got customers who overnight had to shut their delicatessen, takeaway, whatever. And they've done other things. I have one customer who started cooking meals and deliver them to people's homes. So he's just got some little bits of income coming in. So that's a bit of help. And obviously the government really have looked after quite a lot of people. Not everybody, I know that. But if it wasn't for that, I think we would be in a sorry state. And also the business very much is normally dependent upon you. So you need to assess the risks in your personal life as well. If you're going to end up homeless, well, you're not going to be focusing on your business. If you defaulting on your mortgage again, you're going to be worried about that and not looking after your business. You might have health issues, in which case, if you haven't got processes in place, so that's not even about money, it's about processes. If you've got no processes in place, your business is at risk and your security for yourself is going to be at risk longer term. Example 4, I've got 5, so we're nearly done. So this was losing financial data, and one of the businesses I worked in a long time ago, this happened to them. They were on Sage, they lost all their data, they didn't know which customers owed them money and didn't have any invoices to check. Honestly, everything just went pear-shaped. It took them 18 months to recover from that problem. And had they had good financial data backup, or they printed the customer ledger, they would have been able to do something about that. It's no good just running a summary, because if you go to, if somebody knows, some scrupulous people, if they know that you're in trouble, they'll just say, well, you tell me what I owe you, because according to my records, I don't owe you anything. And you have to produce invoices and maybe it's delivery notes, that sort of thing. If you haven't got the backup of the data, you lose the money. It's also linked to your credit control procedures as well. So one thing is to run the reports, and in the olden days we used to print them on paper. We don't do that anymore. We print them to PDF and we hold them in a safe storage area where we can get at them even if the systems crash. And I'm a big fan of QuickBooks. Other people are a big fan of Xero, Free Agent, something like that. These are cloud-based systems. What do you do if you can't get at that data? You need to have some backup plan. So have a look at that, and if you're going to move digital, get your plans in place. Copy invoices. So you might just say, well, I'm not going to print them all. I'm just going to print the ones that haven't been paid. But get your process documented and planned, and if you can, delegate it to somebody else. And it's all right delegating. You then got to go and do some spot checks. If you've got an IT company looking after data backups, you need to check them. I had a customer who had backups and then system crashed, went to put the backup file on. The backup hadn't been working and no tests had been done. 18 months was the last time that the backup worked. 18 months worth of data lost. Tragic. The other thing is the bank account. Particularly at the minute, it's been very difficult to get to the bank. So if you have to make an appointment, go and get your bank statements because you've got a crisis. It's going to be 10 days before you know who's paid you. If you've got online banking, you can go on at midnight, find out who's paid you. It's great. Love it. Download your bank statement so you've got a record. So if somebody says, I paid you on the 7th of January, you can go back to your bank statements. They are the true source. You can go back and check. It didn't arrive in my bank. Can you tell me which bank account you paid it to? That sort of thing. And going back to the plan, if you've got the plan, and if you're in a state of panic, because crisis can put you into that mode, get your plan out and look down, right, what am I meant to do? What's my step-by-step process? If you're in a crisis and you're in panic mode, if you're looking at a list, right, you can just focus on that one line, right, I need to do this, and you can go and do it. In a calm state, you can say, oh yes, I'd easily do that. I would be able to do that in my head, no problem. If you're in a crisis, it's a different thing. You're in panic mode, you cannot think clearly. So you need to get somebody to support you through it, or you need to have a step-by-step plan that you can just tick off. I've done that one, right, what do I do next? Your goal is to mitigate the risks and reduce the financial impact, the mental trauma, all of this. We've all pretty much been through it in 2020, so you should be able to relate to it. So we're on example 5. Here we go. Right. Oh yes. What if you built up this brilliant team and you've got a key employee and you lose that person, and it could be any reason. It could. People have got their own lives and their own goals. You can't hold people to ransom. They don't belong to you. But if you're losing somebody short term or long term, you've got to have a plan in place. So I was reading this, I thought, well, I better get the passwords, and how do we get into that data that I know I need to access? So make sure you can get into the data of any jobs you've delegated to the team. You need to have a system that you can get into in the state of emergency. In the olden days, we used to have a safe at a place I worked, and we used to have passwords written on a piece of paper and locked away in the safe. And it worked. There's different things now. At the moment, I'm using LastPass, so we've got the passwords stored. We can recover them wherever we are. Processes. What are the key tasks? I'm afraid to say I can't do payroll anymore. One time I did it all, but I can't. So I delegated that task, and now what we're doing is we're outsourcing it. But we've assessed the risks, and we are retaining control. So I've still got access to the data. And if necessary, if anything happens, I can get another outsourcing payroll company to look after it. So document your processes. It's not easy, but just, if you're not one to write things, you could record it. There's lots of people using Zoom and Loom. There's loads of software about. Just record it. There's always a way. Don't say I can't, or I haven't got time, or whatever. You've got to make time, and you've got to find a way to do it. If you don't know how to do it, can you outsource it to somebody? Can you do a trade-off with something else? And then you obviously have to test these processes. The best way to test it is to give it to somebody who doesn't do it on a day-to-day basis. If you've ever done a job, you'll do it, and you've done it a while, you'll do it automatic. You'll just automatically do things. So you need somebody who's not used to doing it to run through, because they'll ask you what you might think is a stupid question, but it isn't. Because if you've ever tried to follow a process, you'll go, well, where is that button? Where's that data stored? Because they might say just go to the customer list on a spreadsheet. Well, where is it? It's a finer detail that'll sharpen it out. So I hope that's been useful. The slides are available for download, and the main thing is to get started. Start identifying the risks and get a plan in place. And if you find that you can't do it, go and get some help. Plenty of people. There's some good people around. If you're not in one of the Network North groups, then you're missing out. That's all I can say. And yeah, so thank you, and thanks for the comments. Oh, bless you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm speaking from the voice of experience. So I'm hoping that practical stuff is more useful. So, and I hope you have a lovely day. I think there's some more sessions on there, and if you've got any questions, put them in the box. I am around. I'm going to be jumping on the tables, so I'll be there to answer any of the questions if you've got any. So thank you very much. I'm loving those. Thank you. I love yous all. Thank you, Kim. Yes. You see a lot of things where you need a bit of crisis management. Okay, I'm going to shoot off now. Thank you very much.